This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find it
Church.
hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
are
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
the swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
Something is only really important to Christians. Other religions emphasize different things, so you could stack them up differently by size or by language. I'd like to sort them by organization for just a minute, because there are monarchies out there. The Roman Catholic Church is a political as well as a spiritual monarchy. It's perhaps one of the oldest on the planet. There are federations. Episcopalians and Methodists have bishops who govern areas like we have states. They're smaller, of course, but they all take care of a segment of a community. Some of them are like corporations. Our Reformed friends, for example, have synods which function like boards of trustees to make sure that things don't go off the rails and that they turn a regular spiritual profit. Some are private enterprises. Most megachurches are the product of one enterprising, entrepreneurial person with a big idea and people willing to take part in it, to buy the product, as it were. And some, a very few, maybe a foolish few, are democracies. That would be us. And though we are non-denominational, we get our democracy from those wild and woolly Baptists who gave birth to us a century and a half ago. We're not the only ones, not just Baptists, but Congregationalists and Unitarians and others on the fringes of society have the temerity to believe that the members themselves hold all the power. Not the clergy, not a bishop, not an organization, but you, the people yourselves. And of course, you can't make every decision, so you allow people like your governing board and your clergy to make the day-to-day decisions, but at least once a year you say, hey, explain yourself. Give an accounting. Tell us what you've been up to. And we'll tell you to change course if we don't like it. And we'll choose new leaders too. It sounds rather prosaic, but there's something profound at work here, because the whole idea that all the power rests in you was so different from the way they had done it for centuries. Remember, before the Reformation, there was the Pope, and we all just, when he said jump, we said how high? Where did we get this notion that the individual person has this kind of authority? Well, part of it is the Reformation itself. Have you ever been to Rome? It's a beautiful city, and the Vatican's a beautiful place, and in St. Peter's, it's a beautiful, beautiful building, and if you stand inside of it, you say, how did they build this? And I'm going to tell you, they sold hunks of heaven. If you're a Lutheran, you know the story. A fellow named Tetzel, among others, wandered the neighborhoods of Germany saying, I'll let you can buy your grandparent out of hell with this indulgence here. And they literally raised all the money to build the church by selling salvation. Some people didn't like that, especially a German guy named Martin Luther. And on Halloween, he did a trick-or-treat on the church, posted a bunch of theses on the door saying, maybe this isn't the best way to do business. He didn't know it, but everybody said, yeah, Martin, you said it. And suddenly the Reformation was on, and some people were casting off this and getting rid of that. They were all hot and bothered. They were protesting, hence the word Protestant, the corruptions of the church. Some of them went so far as to say, let's get rid of popes and bishops and all that stuff. You know what matters? People matter. And they created little churches run by the members themselves. They didn't always make it, but that's the kind of stuff that arrived with the Pilgrims at Plymouth. They governed themselves completely. They didn't have to write back to the bishop or look into a book. They literally ran their own business, their own spiritual society, because they thought every person is a child of God. Every person can read the Bible. Every person has something to say. Maybe if we work together, we can do this together. In medieval times, there was a phrase that I'll recite. It's in Latin: vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. They actually believe that, and so do we. When we get together as a community, when we act in concert as a community, it is as sacred a moment as we have. Not this one, not even those beautiful trumpets, not even the magnificent organ. It's when we rise up with our own choices as a community. That's the sacred moment. Now, why should you visitors care a whit about this? Because the gospel I'm giving you, strange as it sounds, is that you, every one of you has a gift of mind and heart that can be part of the populi, of the vox populi. And without you, the vox Dei is attenuated. You have something essential that must be offered here by conversing, yes, at annual meetings, but in study groups, in worship, in classes, in fellowship. We free our minds and grow our souls, and we then have an impact on our lives and the world that we would never have individually. Think of it as like this. If we are all, biblically speaking, images of God, every one of us has the same spiritual DNA inside of us, and you're each cells in a giant body. And wouldn't it be great if we got organized from time to time? This is a mighty act of faith for a bunch of skeptics, don't you think? To think that each one of us has within us the power that every other person has, that has the gift of insight and wisdom that everyone else has, and that together we can raise an institution, we can shape a community, we can change the planet. That is a profoundly spiritual act, even if our annual meeting is reliably dull. So appreciate the gift you are enjoying. So let's talk about the hobnobbing part for a moment. You know, our local history as a church goes well before 1869, because before that there were two Baptist churches. They were each quarreling with each other. And you want to know what they were quarreling about? Well, they each accused the other as having too many sinners in charge. That's because they weren't enforcing church discipline. In those days, church discipline was making sure that you not only came to church, but that you meant it and that you lived your life in a holy way. And if you didn't keep up the standard, out you went. And they fell apart because each group was saying the other one was more sinful than the other. It got so bad that one winter day in February, members of one group snuck over to the other, took the pulpit and the lectern and the Bible and the hand organ and put it in a cart and took it back to their place because they thought they were the better church. So if you think we don't get along from time to time, but my point here is that there is a danger inherent in any group, including a democracy. It's the danger of hobnobbing. We are mighty fine people. They, not so much. The tendency toward spiritual snobbery is very real everywhere, including here. Snobs never call themselves that, but how often have you thought or heard someone say around here, well, we are the reasonable, generous people, and they are the unthinking, uncaring, closed-minded lot. We pour out the milk of human kindness, and they are uncharitable and unkind, whether it's another church or just another committee in the church. We all tend to favor the people we know. We tend to be suspicious of the people we don't. We tend to be clannish. We just do. It's the way humans are built. Yes, we are each images of God, but we can think that our image is a little more divine than yours, that all our men are good looking and all our women are strong and all our children are above average. Do you remember Dr. Seuss's Story of the Sneetches? I'm doing all year long referring to children's literature where great wisdom resides. In the Sneetches, two groups of Sneetches exist, those without stars on their bellies and those that did, and the ones that had stars lorded it over those who did not. And they invented a machine to implant stars on bellies so you couldn't tell one from the other, and instantly those who did have stars had them removed so they could remain different from those who did. You see where I'm going. You see where he's going. The desire to be different and better than someone else is innate. We can't get away from it unless we practice a third art, that of spiritual humility. And for this, I'm going to refer to April 14th, 1906, when the Apostolic Faith Mission of Azusa Street in Los Angeles moved into its new quarters. It's an African-American church. There was almost nothing in it. The room was 40 by 60. The benches were planks nailed down on beer barrels that had been emptied. And something bizarre happened. People started feeling tingly all over. They started speaking in incoherent ways. People claimed to be healed. They began singing songs they had never known. It was the Azusa Street Revival, and here's what you don't know. It's still going on. After 112 years, they are still in the grips of the Holy Spirit there. And since they have done that, we have the Assemblies of God Church and the Churches of God in Christ Church and the Pentecostal Holiness Church. It is the birth of modern Pentecostal religion. And what does this have to do with us? Nothing remotely, you're thinking. But as someone who has Pentecostal friends and has attended Pentecostal services, what you see there is the practice of spiritual humility. I sat at Bethel Pentecostal Church this summer, and I heard a woman offer a prayer of thanks for finding a $10 bill that would help her pay her debts. I heard the preacher remind the men to care for their wives and children and to lay off the alcohol. At Lighthouse Full Life Center, I heard Marvin Sapp ask the people to forgive him because he'd been traveling and had not any sleep, and they gave it to him. And then he instructed us to look to the person next door to us and say, I forgive you. An odd feeling, and also a very good feeling. We who cherish religious democracy need to remember that it takes an equal commitment to spiritual equality. And we get that by practicing the art of spiritual humility. It means we have to cherish the different person as being as important as we are. Because none of us has any personal claim to being better than anyone else. Not me, not the governing board, not anyone who's been to college, not someone who has a large car or a large bank account. Because only together have we the power collectively that we need to do what needs to be done.